Hey guys, Dave with Nerdarchy here, for Nerds by Nerds, hanging out with some of the Nerdarchy crew.
I'm Nerdarchy's Ted.
I'm Nathan Nerdarch.
So today we're going to talk about gaming with noobs. Now, new
Game
players.
New players.
So we had I started my family game with my wife, my son, and my daughter. Nate has recently started a game with his
My nephew.
Yeah, your nephew and some of his friends.
Yeah, and his friends that have all been asking about playing D&D.
Nice.
Now, the difference between these two groups is, your group is all older. They're late teens, early 20s.
Yeah, like college age.
Then it's, my sister, your wife, however you want to classify it. And then, your son is 14 and your daughter is 9?
10.
10. Okay. So, very different.
From 9 to like 41.
You got a very different, group dynamic here.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
The uncle / friend versus, the husband / father, is definitely a different scenario as a DM. So basically, what kind of, problems have you guys, come across, or what things have you had to come up with interesting solutions for?
Well, I would say one of the most difficult things to overcome is their nervousness about using the wrong die.
Okay.
And asking about it when it's like, hey, it's an attack, you do a D20.
Mm-hmm.
If it's a check, you do a D20. If it's
in doubt, we're playing Dungeons and Dragons. Grab the D20.
Yeah. If I don't say roll damage, roll a D20. Like that kind of. So I'm kind of getting them into that mindset where that's their go-to die, unless they're doing something like rolling damage.
Okay.
Because pretty much that's true. It's you roll that for everything else.
Right.
Pretty much, I can't think of much else that you wouldn't roll D20 for.
Well, that's if you're gonna whenever you DM for people that are new to the hobby, you're gonna get a barrage of which die do I roll again?
Yeah.
It just goes with the territory.
Yeah, and they're starting to get the sense of, well, the D8 looks like this, and the D4 looks like this. Like, oh, the pyramid. Oh, the diamond.
Yeah. So my first game with my family, the second encounter, I TPK'd them. You gotta let them know right off the bat. As the DM, you're not fucking around. I don't care if we married you, you're my kids, I will kill you. And that's that. So, but that being said, I don't want to drive new players from the hobby right away. It goes kind of against our mission statement.
Yeah.
Which is to, expand the hobby and share it with other people.
So the players found themselves in a crypt. They looked at this, scary gargoyle statue. They explored the crypt a little bit, trying to find their way out, and they were assaulted by skeletons.
Yeah, they found themselves caught between the hammer and the anvil. They had skeletons coming at them from both sides because they stopped. They basically just stopped in the middle of the room, which was like a really wide, long hall, and decided to battle out with them there. And with them coming from both sides, there wasn't much chance for them. And they had a series of bad rolls.
So they had bad tactics and bad rolls, which left them in a poor position.
Yes.
So you drop all three of them. As the DM who's trying to foster the game, what did you do?
Well, instead of taking their character sheets, I hit them with a dream sequence. They wake up back in the room where they originally landed in, with the gargoyle leering down at them with its green glowing eyes. And now they so they go through the archway again. They see the exact same scene, and this time they're like, "We are running to the other end." Or no, they go, "What was at the end of the hall?" I said, "The door." So we're running to the door, and then they're like debating over what to do when they get to the door, and the door was stuck. So the Dragonborn fighter makes a strength check and bursts it open really easy.
Nice.
And they go through the door, and just as they had gotten to the door, they heard the sarcophagus is
opening up,
creak and open up, and the door slam on the ground. And then they're like, we go through the door. I'm like, what do you want to do? Only one skeleton can get through the door at a time. So, initially they were going to run, but they're like, if only one can get through at a time, we're going to kill them. So they killed them back. And then they're getting ready to leave, and then my wife goes, wait, but no, we can't leave yet. We have to search the coffins.
Nice. Yes.
So they got a little bit of gold for their trouble. But not only that, because at the top of the hall, at the top of the stairwell, they found 4 Sturges. So they would have been in the same position with monsters coming from either direction. So it was better that they had stopped to
deal with the skeletons.
So their tactics from that point on drastically improved. And I honestly feel if I would have just fudged some rolls for them and made it easier that way, they would have learned nothing from the encounter.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like it was better to do it that way.
So and you were telling me that that they had indecision as to whether or not you had planned for the skeletons to murder them, and start them back.
I never wrote any material for any of the 3 sessions I did with them.
Nice.
And I mean they didn't know the difference. So I just kind of ad-libbed it all.
We did a little XP calculation later, and it seemed that it was definitely on the deadly encounter side.
Yeah, it was. But you know what?
But tactics.
Tactics, and you also have to consider too, like, even though there's the XP range, as long as the monster doesn't have the ability to one-hit your players, that to me that's the biggest deciding factor, right? Because might be a monster that is within the hard range, but it can one-shot your casters,
right?
Whereas the skeletons, they actually did one-shot my son David, but on a crit.
Right.
On a standard roll, they couldn't do that.
Yeah.
And you happen to roll really well on the damage.
I rolled 11 out of 12.
Right.
Yeah.
So there was that. But that being said, Dragonborn has an area of effect. I had 2 casters with area of effects. Right. So they kind of had some options in that regards.
So what about you? Do you have any kind of tactical issues or things that the players have kind of had issues with?
Yes. I have several of the players are getting used to their spells. They've never played before, and then they're playing casters as their first class that they play. So that not only do they have to worry about whether or not to fight combat wise, but they have to figure out like, oh, well, do I want to use a spell that hurts this guy, helps my party, actually damages the guy, or puts me in a better position. So they've got a lot of options for casting as well. So I found that those are the people that have the hardest time making a decision. Is the ones that are casters.
More resources to manage.
More resources to manage than just throw my daggers or shoot an arrow or hit the sky. And I found with one of my players, one of her biggest issues is that she wants to do like crazy finishing moves. And while she has athletics, she's a halfling, and she really wants to climb all the monsters and stab them in the chest. And I'm like,
let him.
I'm just saying. I was just like, it was for the Nothic fight. And I was just like, how about we practice this some other time and you can see how it goes. Because I
so would have let him.
Yeah, I was concerned. She would. I think she would just assume that would just be like a regular attack, and it wouldn't. There would be other things involved that could be failed, and then she could be hurt. And I guess maybe I should have just let her learn that way.
All right. Well,
I'll just let her try it on the next whatever she wants to fight.
You're running the game. You're fighting. They're fighting. I
give them an extra check to make, and I determine on the fly. I probably make it like a DC 10 or something.
Okay.
Honestly, it just depends on how cool it makes it, right? So if it's just silly, then I'll probably make it harder. But if it's kind of cool, then I would probably give them a little bit easier chance of doing it. And if they pull it off, then I'd reward them somehow.
Okay.
With either inflicting a condition, knocking it over, doing extra damage.
I'll keep that in mind for.
I'd look at it as okay. The halfling's coming up and it's going to climb the Nothic and try and slit its throat.
Yeah.
I'd give it an acrobatics or an athletics check depending upon what they actually had. Either one would work, and if they managed to get the attack, I'd give it an auto crit. If they're going for a neck, if it's like, I'm trying to do something to a specific body part, and one of the other conditions, which thankfully we got these DM screens now with all the conditions right there, you can do all kinds of interesting things.
They don't have called shots in this game, right?
No, that was like a second edition thing.
Yeah.
I mean, you could always start it. It actually came up in my game.
Okay.
My son wanted to slam one skeleton into the other. He's like, can I do that? I'm like, I will let you do that if you roll with disadvantage. You can attack them both at the same time.
That definitely increased the difficulty.
So did he try and grab one and swing it at the other?
No, he wanted to swing his hammer and just smash one into the other. So with disadvantage, he rolled and he got like whatever and a 1. This is one of the reasons why he died too. By the way, so I'm like, so he critical fumbled, and I was using critical fumbles. So I'm like, you swing your hammer so hard and miss, spinning yourself around, making yourself dizzy, and you fall on your butt. And the next attack with you has advantage. And that attack was a crit.
Nice. Yeah. Now, I've seen players, and I've actually been a player who's had, in 3rd edition, where you actually grab an enemy and be able to swing it at another enemy. So I would do in that kind of situations. It's like, okay, well, if you're attacking another enemy with one enemy with another, then they would both take like D6 plus strength.
Right.
So there's all different kinds of interesting things that players can do. And when you're new to the game, you're not stuck with the quote unquote restrictions of, well, I've read 3 rule books, so I know what
They're
I'm allowed
thinking,
to do.
I saw this in The Hobbit. I'm going to totally do this, just like the troll thing.
Right. I'm going to grab this goblin. I'm just going to throw him.
Yeah.
All right. Sure.
And I rather encourage that aspect of the play than get everyone stuck in the I hit, I swing, I hit.
Well,
I swing.
fifth edition really has that open-ended feel. So I mean, if the DM is supposed to be able to say, you know what, let's just leave things open to interpretation, then go ahead as players. Offer something crazy, and if your DM says, yeah, I like that, you're going to have more fun at your game. So
those are good points.
Things you can learn from new players.
I guess my worry was it was going to get out of hand. Like, oh, I want to do this crazy. Like, this is like their second major. Well, this is their first major fight.
Right.
It's their second encounter.
I welcome the crazy. It makes my games more interesting.
So I'd rather increase it slowly than have it go all kinds of nuts at the start. So
understandable.
But that is a good suggestion.
It could have been so great. She could have fumbled it, and then Notha could have grabbed her and hurled her at the paladin or something.
Yeah, or she could have impaled herself on one of its spiny back parts. So, well,
that's less interesting. I'd have probably had to hurl it at another player.
Oh yeah, grab it and
yeah,
halfling size. That
halfling dart.
Notha could totally throw a halfling.
Absolutely,
almost anybody can. Maybe ogres throw halflings for sport.
Well, I mean, halflings are 30 to 40 pounds. And,
yeah,
I've got a 6-year-old son. He's in that 30 to 40 pound range. I could chuck him.
Yeah, definitely.
So, do we have anything else to talk about with noobs? Things that we can share so that we can encourage new players. Or
well, I would say for as a DM tip, don't get frustrated when they just can't seem to remember what die to use, because it's really more about them not wanting to mess up than them not remembering what die it's.
Well, to me, that's the least important thing is the dice and whatever. So I guess with my daughter, she's 10. So the way I explained it to her, I told her it's like playing dolls. When she plays dolls, she makes the voice. They do voices and they do they talk in character. Well, it's really the same thing. Mm-hmm. So trying to get them to do that at the table. That's like a huge thing, and getting new players to actually role play, and talk in first person instead of third person.
My character does this.
Yeah. Now, with both the groups, are they all brand new players? Like typically, a group.
I've got one that's done 3.5, but so he's the one that's used to role playing and playing type of games like that, and everybody else is like some kind of artist, comic artist, of 3-dimensional craftsperson, and 2 musicians. So they have no problem. My biggest issue when they're talking is saying my character does this rather than saying the actual I'm going to say this conversation like it's me. But they've got no problem. Once I remind them, hey, talking character rather than.
The reason I bring it up is typically new players join an existing group, and you can always just have somebody say, all right, well, you two are going to always sit next to each other, mentor this person so that they can always help out the situation without slowing down the game. But if you have one guy who's only played 3.5,
everybody's new to 5th in my game.
They're all new to 5th,
and I'm
so
barely not new.
as DMs, behind the screen, do you guys offer up suggestions or try to say, well, that might not be the best idea, or do you just let their brains go with whatever they say?
I've been letting them go with some minor guidance. For the most part, though, I find having a full table of noobs is way better than the mix because there's no one to intimidate them.
Mm-hmm. That's a good point.
They don't have to feel like they have to compete with people who have been doing this for a long time and they're just starting out. So I think there's an advantage to having a full table of new players compared to.
I would agree.
As well?
I'd agree with Dave. Yeah, absolutely. It's been really easy just getting everybody acclimated at the same pace. I don't have to worry about someone being like, "Yeah, I know all that stuff," or "I'm awesome." Compared to everybody
somebody
else.
who's going to over role play, or who someone's like, "Come on, I know these mechanics already. Can you just go?"
Yeah, there's no one being irritated by that. I would say the over role play problem wouldn't be much of a big deal because hopefully he'd be drawing the other people in. Mm-hmm. He or she would be drawing the other people in. But with me, it's kind of, as soon as I start getting into a character, an NPC, so I'm kind of like the mentor in the sense of the role-playing aspect.
Cool. Now, I find, too, that like if you have the mentor sitting next to them, sometimes it actually detracts from the new player role-playing because they get locked in on rules. Okay. If you don't know the rules, it's hard to focus on them. That's true. So all they have is the role-play in the beginning. So I find that's better. The only problem I have now is my daughter is playing a bard, and I constantly have to hear, "Thunderwave, I choose you," because we have spell cards, and she throws them down.
Wow.
Yeah, of my three players, my daughter is the most bloodthirsty, and she's playing a bard shifter, and she wants to bite people's faces off constantly.
Wow.
And I'm like, no, you have to take a short rest before you can bite someone's face off again, honey.
Just a short rest. Just like, let's take a nap then.
Wow, that's kind of savage.
Yeah, well, she's only done it a couple times so far.
But you've only had 3 sessions.
Well, and then I introduced some NPC orcs that weren't necessarily there to fight. And my son and my daughter immediately want to fight. And my wife convinced them that we should probably talk to them first.
The voice of wisdom.
Yeah. So it worked out in the end.
I found that I feel like they have more fun role playing, but I think that they enjoy the combat because it's very new to them, while interacting socially is not. So I see them as, if I had 2/3 role playing, 1/3 combat, that would probably be the better mix for them, because I had 2 combats in this previous one. Mm-hmm. I just felt like it wasn't as fun for them, but that might just be my perspective from it. So definitely interview your players to say what did you like about this session, kind of to get some kind of feedback, because you can kind of start learning who feels like they're being underutilized, or kind of I have all this talent and special ability for my character, but I don't really get to use it because we're out in the woods or something. Well, so kind of it gives you ideas for further adventures. So I've developed several adventures that are going to happen after this, just simply from the character's background and what they seem to like to do. So,
as a general rule of DMing, you want to know your players and know their characters so that you can have your story integrated with the character's goals and fulfill whatever criteria your players are actually looking for. You're going to have, generally at any given table, you're going to have a mix of role players and hack and slashers. So the people who want combat, you want to make sure that's there. People who want role playing, you make sure that's there. But little nuances and little things will keep players coming back to the table.
And mix and match those things up too, so offer role playing situations within the combat.
Absolutely.
And and it doesn't always have to be speaking per se. It could be the halfling wanting to run up the Nothic and slit his throat. But the more things you do, every time, in my opinion, every time you let someone do something that they really didn't think they were allowed to do, mm-hmm. it opens the door for them to try more stuff. And you're like, oh my God, they're going to try more stuff. It's going to get crazier and crazier. But, I say I welcome it, because if it's too crazy, either the mechanics of the game is going to shut them down, and they're going to get a bad roll, and they're like, well, maybe I shouldn't try that again.
Just if you set the DC at a higher amount, if it's a really crazy thing, then they're going to fail sometimes. Yeah,
if the halfling wanted to do a somersault over the Nothic, that might be a bit more difficult, because it's like a 10-foot jump or something.
That's going to be very hard or nearly impossible. So go ahead and make that DC 25 acrobatics check.
Which she doesn't have.
Drop a 20 on the die 20, and we'll see what happens.
And we'll say, and not claiming you'll have success then.
But, yeah, there's a good possibility that something could happen.
Yeah.
Basically, a halfling shot put, or the Nothic plays badminton with the halfling,
or it just looks at it.
No. That's after it plays badminton.
Oh yeah.
It tracks it through the air, rotting its flesh as it flies. So I threw some different kinds. I tried to throw some different situations in there, and I like to bring my players together through like random events, and then like make something happen that kind of makes them have to like stay together for a little while, and then hopefully that they'll kind of bond and then want to stay together after that. And that worked out well. I mean, I had a couple of role-playing situations. They found an enchanted fountain with a mystic bonsai tree.
Nice.
In the tomb, then they got to encounter my daughter's parents because she had snuck out, and then the father actually got captured while he was looking for her. So they were going to hold him for bandits were going to hold him for ransom. So then they had to go rescue the father.
Nice.
So they enjoyed it. My son's already been at the table for about a year now playing different games with us. He's the most experienced. Most of his experience was actually with Mutants and Masterminds, not Dungeons and Dragons.
Right.
Which is a little bit different.
And that is just you always roll that D20.
Yeah. So hopefully I'm creating 3 more role players.
Great.
In the hobby.
Excellent.
Yeah. He was happy he bought his first pound of dice.
I know. He's telling me.
And you got like 5 players, right?
Yeah, 5 players. I bought a pound of dice, and it seems to be enough. After I trade it some with Ted, it seemed to be enough.
Nice.
So 5 players plus a DM, pound of dice works.
Yep.
Nice. I think we leveled up these new players.
Indeed.
So with that, you guys can check us out at nerdarchy.com.
Check us out on Facebook.
You can also join the conversation on Reddit.
So until next time,
stay nerdy.